Hi, and welcome to Growth by Design, brought to you by RX2 Solutions. Because growth doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. I'm Rob Graham.
And I'm Rosner.
And today we're going to be talking about leadership, specifically how in most small and mid-sized businesses, leadership is not a title, but it is a necessity. And what we're going to do today is break down the correct way that we see to develop leadership within your organization without the needs of having massive budgets or ridiculous leadership training programs like GE does. And we'll kind of get into that. But what I'd like to do is identify and start with the four main phases that I believe of leadership there are within an organization. So you have self-leadership, you have your team leadership, organizational leadership, and strategic leadership. And we're going to break this down into each of them. So think about self-leadership as the person on the sports team, the soccer field, right? Who's just highly motivated to show up every day. They're managing their mindset and their time and their accountability just to do what they're supposed to do. So you get home from work, you know that you're supposed to make dinner for your girls, right? And that's kind of self-leadership. If you want to get better or stronger, you have to go work out. If you want to become a better golfer, you have to go swing the golf club and things of that nature. So that's where self-leadership, in my eyes, kind of starts. And then from there, it's natural to segue that into team leadership. And this isn't by a title. You're not a team lead. It's just you're the guy in the football huddle who's inspiring people, motivating people, whether it's by play, by voicing, certain comments, reactions, things of that nature. The one who's inspiring the people around them to be accountable and to do what they're supposed to do at that self-leadership level. And then we have the organizational leadership piece. And this is more formalized, where you want to put those ideally naturally born leaders into these types of roles where they're able to inspire, rally, and illustrate their ideas so that people are going to want to follow the steps and the goals and just compete for that common ground. And then after that, we have the strategic leadership piece of it. And this would be more borderline, let's say CEOs, vice presidents, whatever you want to call that in an organization. And they're going to be the ones coming up with the ideas on how to really shape and mold the organization, whether it's culturally, financially, technologically. So you have all these different types of leaders within your organization. And then according to Indeed, only less than 10% of small businesses have a succession plan for this. Or they have people in their organizations that can come up from the ground, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today is why is leadership so important in small businesses, and how do you get it from starting from the person at entry level all the way through? How do companies do this? So this is more of a staggering statistic, but 77% of the companies, small businesses, have identified that there is a gap in leadership. So where do you start?
When it comes to leadership, I always see it as leading the charge. That's kind of what I picture. It's the person who is the first one to do something, willing to roll up their sleeves and just shows everybody else that it can be done and here's how to do it. Those are the people who I think are going to rise to become the leaders within an organization. Just because, but again, that's, the team looking up to someone and respecting them for doing it. It's not necessarily like they should get the title of managing the entire team. You still need those people that are going to be the doers. And that's typically what happens. It's the person that the team respects because they're either the best at it, they try the hardest for whatever reason. It's usually one of those two or a combination of both, that they've just earned the respect of the people around them, and the rest of the team just listens to them.
Sure.
So how do you develop it?
Yeah, that's the question, because like LinkedIn right now is saying that 83% of leaders out there acknowledge that there's a skill gap,
Yeah.
but 5% are doing something about it.
I think the first thing is letting go. I mean, we talked last week about owners who want to keep everything in house and aren't willing to defer, and you can't scale yourself. I think you need to give people an opportunity to show that they have the capacity to do some of these tasks. You don't want to give them everything all at once, but you give them a task, see how they do it. If they perform well, great, give them more. The more that you give them and the more they come through, as long as they want to keep taking more, let them take more. And now they've developed the competency, and then they can lead the rest of the team and train other people how to do it. That you've created a leader when after you teach someone, like you're very good at something, you teach someone how to do it. Then after that, they teach someone how to do it. At that point, that's when I think they're a leader.
Okay. Right. Or with this topic, would defining career paths help to establish these leaders, career milestones, or is there some sort of training that you can incorporate into your, let's say, yearly reviews, things of that you want? Hey, Ross, I need you to get better at X, Y, and Z, or however you want to phrase it nicely, and kind of coach them up on that so they can start working on that, so that everyone in your organization can have some of the thought process of a leader?
It's an interesting question. I don't think that you can tell somebody the area that you want them to get better in per se. In some cases you can. If it's part of their job responsibilities, yes, you need to say, okay, here are the 5 things that we do. You're really good at these 3. Please get better at these 2 and work on them. I think where it really comes into play is the things that aren't really in their job description. To say, hey, like, you're really good at these things. Where do you want to grow in your career? Maybe they want to move into management. Maybe they just want to learn maybe they want to learn Excel better. It could really be anything. But having them always kind of challenged and growing, because if they're not growing, they're probably going to get bored, and then they might look for something else that's more challenging for them. Or maybe they just want to coast. I don't know. But I think it's giving them the option of working on what they think is interesting once they've sort of mastered everything that they need to know for the job that they're doing now.
Okay. So we have had organizations come to us with this exact same question. How do I build leadership throughout the levels of my organization? And the one reoccurring theme that's worked, at least in my eyes, is basic training for individuals who want that as a career path. So and I'm not talking about a formalized leadership training platform, right? Like GE did, where they sent all of their, what was it? I have the stats here somewhere. Over 90% of GE's senior executives went through like their leadership training program. I'm not saying anything necessarily formal like that, but if you're a warehouse or a manufacturer, you're going to need a leader on your line. You're going to need a leader in the warehouse. You're going to need a leader here and there. So people who are aspiring for more, if you include basic, let's just say, leadership best practices at those levels. So the guy or gal who's in the warehouse is not going to be receiving the same thing as the guy or gal who's this C-level executive. But you kind of include that in each phase. By the time they move up through the ranks, they'll have more and more leadership training and acumen and general knowledge that you're kind of breeding it by culture. And that's one thing that historically we've seen has worked. And, we're nowhere near the size of GE. There's no formalized RX2 leadership program that you go in and you're going to have just an excellent product coming out. But it's a way that small businesses can adapt what they're currently doing to continuously have a pipeline of people who they think they could potentially be leaders. And this isn't saying that, you're going to be a leader just because you're going through this. It's just saying that this is going to help you get to the next level that you want to get to. And if you never get there, the person just knows how to deal with different situations at the appropriate level within the organization. Getting back to GE and their leadership program, which is kind of cool, it was connected to direct business outcomes, not classroom theory. So that you're not sitting there saying, theoretically, in scenario A, this is what you should do. It was, hey, we're going to do X, then this is Y is going to be the result of that. And that's a good way of teaching the leadership, just because it doesn't have to be necessarily a financial outcome. It's just a business outcome.
Funny that last week I was kind of bad mouthing GE because they had just all these businesses under one umbrella that didn't seem connected, and now we're talking good about them. So I guess that's a good thing. I would say today, companies that I think do a really good job of this are, number one, Chick-fil-A. We've interviewed several people from Chick-fil-A that are just incredibly polished. Chick-fil-A gives people the ability to take ownership over their work. And they say here, I mean, when you go into Chick-fil-A, you know that every time when you say thank you, they're going to say my pleasure. It's just how they train their people to do it. It's the only place that does that. And the employees that work there, for the ones that I know who have worked there, they still say that long after they've left. It leaves that kind of an impact on them. The other company I think does it would be Enterprise with their management and leadership training program that they have. When I was coming out of college 20 years ago and even today, people that go through that program, it really jumpstarts their career because of all the things that they teach you and all of the things that you have to.
Part of that is that there is rotational. And that was a key part of the GE is you go through the leadership program, you're not just stuck. You're not just the accounting leader. You'll do some of the IT work. You do some of the HR, some of the marketing, and they rotate you through the organization. So you get a picture of what they're trying to do from a holistic standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, that's important. It makes it easier to lead a team when you know the goal of the entire team.
Yeah.
And, as far as developing leaders, I think it's really just giving people responsibility and see what they do with it. And then asking them, like, did you like this? Did you not like it? Where do you want to go in your career? Okay, great. You want to be a manager. Here's what we're looking for you to do to get to that point. Make sure that's clearly laid out. Because we've seen several people throughout our careers that wanted to be leaders, and then they found out what it entailed, not leaders, but wanted to be managers, and then found out later what it would entail. And they're like, you know what? I'd rather be an individual contributor. It's just for my personality, I would just rather do that. And that's completely fine. And you can be a leader without being a manager. Like there's, in the Army, you have a sergeant who knows what's going on with every soldier in the battalion or the platoon, whatever it's, I'm not in the Army, whatever it's called now. And then you have the general that's handling all the strategy. They're both leaders, but they're leaders in different ways.
Sure.
And they're both needed.
And that's, we're going to go the military route. Like there's decision making, there's accountability, and then there's influence, which really comprises what a leader is. And it's at different levels. The sergeant versus the general, the warehouse lead versus the CEO, right? The impact and their decisions are just as important in a way in their own little micro world. And good organizations allow their people to be empowered enough that they can step into these leadership roles without having necessarily the accountability of destroying something.
Right. Let them mess it up.
It's all within risk control.
Right.
And then you get to see what they do. And if not, they're making a good decision. And you can dive into it as, hey, why? And do, kind of a lesson learned type deal. And if you do it properly and you structure it the right way, it's going to be viewed as a good coaching moment, not a penalizing moment.
Yeah, not you messed up.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of what we discussed is, and are talking about, is a crucial way for small businesses to build a leadership program without added cost. You're not bringing in a person to teach your organizational leadership. when you start small and at the bottom, and then you work your way up as that person progresses within your organization, they're going to have years of experience through this, not just one crash course. And it's also going to provide a significant risk mitigation to your business. Because if you have someone in the lines that may or may not leave, but you have people backing them up who are fully capable to segue into that, you're never going to necessarily need to really worry about if one of your leaders leave, because it's all going to be embodied by the company, the culture, and what you're trying to move to. So let's talk about this. What are some of the leadership benchmarks in strength? Like, how can you determine if your organization has a good pipeline, is promoting strong leadership throughout the rank and files, has enough of those type of personnels or those employees working for your company?
You have to just give them responsibility and test it out. I mean, everybody's going to say that they want to be everybody wants to rule the world, right? But it's like, can anybody actually do it? It's like, just, you're going to have to give them responsibility somehow and see how they do. Like, I remember when I was, when I was maybe 10 years old, me and my sister made dinner for the family one night a week. And my parents just let us do it. And we messed it up a lot. And they were like, all right, you might have wanted to try this or this or this. And we got better. And then eventually, like, we got to make dinner 2 nights a week. And we really enjoyed doing that. You're never going to know until you put someone in that position and give them the autonomy and the authority to do some of those things. It's always better to do it in a low pressure, kind of low impact situation, because, if they mess up, they're going to feel bad. You're going to want to yell at them for something probably that wouldn't be fair to yell at them about. Just use it as a coaching moment. But it all comes down to giving them that chance. If they want that chance, some people don't want it.
We're making the assumption that the person that we're talking about wants the opportunity.
Yeah, then give them the opportunity. Just say, great, I run this report once a week. Why don't you start running it? You'll run that report, give us your take on it, and we'll go from there. Just start small, and then after they prove themselves, move up. It's not like you can give them some test and be like, all right, you scored a 98. You're ready to move into leadership. Like, it's not like that. It's just incrementally give them more responsibility and see how they do.
Like, you can bring them into meetings and have them start giving a specific update. You could have them running certain parts of your meetings entirely. And like you said, you give them little piece by piece kind of problem solving autonomy within your organization so they can move up one at a time. The biggest takeaway with this is you're going to be able to get an inventory of your employees and where you can plug and play them. So from an operational and organizational standpoint, it's almost like a succession planning for you. And it's a risk mitigation if someone were to leave, or even, God forbid, you needed to take time away from the business for whatever reason, you'll still have some sort of idea that the company can be okay for the most part of it. The one thing that's incredibly important that we didn't really touch on too much, but it's the culture aspect of the leader. Does that person who is acting as a leader embody the cultural and the emotional part of your business?
They better. If they don't, you probably should either get rid of them or keep them as an individual contributor.
This isn't a formalized leader.
But the last thing you want is like, it's almost like there was this show on HBO called Chernobyl. It was about the disaster at the Chernobyl nuclear plant in the mid-'80s. And they needed to get the coal miners to come to the plant to dig a tunnel under the plant to do something to prevent a horrible, even worse disaster from happening. And the guy who was like the minister of coal showed up in this $2,000 suit and didn't know any of the people there. And the guy that ended up making the decision was just the coal miner that everybody respected. And he made the decision. But the thing is, you need that person to be on board. You can't even let them get into that position of informal leadership if they haven't bought into what you're trying to do, because they can turn the entire team against you and have everybody following them instead of following what you want them to follow. And we've seen that happen. unfortunately.
And the good and bad of it is that when you have a good culture within a leader, it just multiplies and it goes. However, on the flip side is when you have bad culture, it does the exact same thing.
People will follow that leader whether they're right or wrong.
Exactly. So, what I hope everyone gets is that the majority of the small businesses don't have as good as a leadership strategy in place. This means training. This means developing their current employees to fill in these gaps and to promote leadership organically within the organization. So when you're that business owner, right, and you're trying to grow your organization, it's no longer optional to have these types of strategies in place. You're not going to build a sustainable place of business without it.
The problem that I see with doing this, it's the people in middle management and middle upper management might be self-conscious that some of the people on their team might eventually become better than them and replace them if they become too good at it. So you're going to have to reassure them that they're stable and safe while still, mentoring and training the next group of people that's going to come in.
Correct. And I think if you have the right corporate culture and mentality, those people aren't going to be thinking that.
Hopefully. It's the same reason why we talk to, especially in IT lately, there's people that have been in their career for 30, 35, 40 years. They got let go, and now they have director and VP all over their resume, and they're applying for manager roles that they think they're way overqualified for, and they won't get interviews. Well, it's because the person that would be interviewing you has been doing it for 20 years less than you, probably doesn't have the skill set you have. You're probably more qualified than them. And now they're going to be your boss. And it's like, why would I hire somebody that's going to make me look bad? Unfortunately, that's how some people think.
Correct. And what I'm saying is, from a small business standpoint, you wouldn't weed those people out.
You would have to.
Because they're not going to breed the culture, the environment, or the success that you want your company to have.
I think I saw a meme like, what happens if we train our people and they leave versus what happened, and then someone says like, well, what happens if we don't?
Yeah.
And it's kind of that mindset. It's like, be happy if you train them up and they leave. Be happy for them.
Correct.
Don't be upset that you lost them. It's like, if you have the culture and the ability to train people up and get them up like that, you'll be able to do it with somebody else.
Correct. And from that, the one recruiting tip is for this week is going to be look to hire for that leadership, because not everyone's going to have it naturally, but you'll be able to tell when you're talking to somebody if they are a natural leader or have the potential to take on that skill set. And if you have the opportunity to hire someone who can be a potential leader and has most of what you're looking for versus someone who's not and has everything you're looking for, you're probably better off going with the person who's a natural leader and is missing just a small portion of it.
As long as you're willing to develop them.
Yeah.
If you hire them and you're not willing to develop them, they're probably going to get frustrated and leave. So
that is true.
But hopefully we're talking to only people that are open to doing that.
Exactly. That's the whole audience for this one, is you want to develop and grow your organization. Leadership starts at the very beginning.
Well, that concludes this episode of Growth by Design. As a reminder, growth does not happen by accident. It happens by design. If you'd enjoyed today's show, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.